Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I'm calling this meeting to order. At this time, I'll ask Ann to take the roll call.
Good morning, thank you. Mike Alley,
Present.
Dr. Edward Berger,
Present.
Dennis Bland, Ann Bowen, present. Mike Daigle,
Present.
Judd Fisher, Bill Hanna,
Present.
Al Hubbard, Nancy Jordan,
Present.
Chris Lamoth,
Here.
Pepper Mulheron,
Here.
Dan Peterson,
Here.
Tom Saunders,
Here.
Erica Studerman.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a quorum. And I want to thank Purdue University President Mitch Daniels and President-elect Meng Ching and their team for being our gracious host last night at Westwood. We had a wonderful time there, and we also really appreciate your hosting our meeting today. We'll hear more from President Daniels shortly as part of the Purdue budget presentation. So I will continue with our reports and hand it over to him shortly. I want to thank Mike Klein and Chris Rule for hosting our tours yesterday. For those of you who couldn't make it, it was an absolutely wonderful overview of some of the forward-leaning things that Purdue University is doing. Scott Meyer, who is the managing director of Zucro Labs, made my intellectual capacity feel like about this much. But he put it in layman's terms, all the things they're doing with the propulsion lab. Absolutely cutting edge stuff. And I'm really happy that we have brainiacs like that working in our top research universities. And then we went to the vet school, which was absolutely fascinating. You know what to expect when you're talking about small animals, but we saw the equine hospital, and Leanne Happ took us around there, and it really pointed out how important it is to treat our most vulnerable creatures with care and with love, because that's really what determines what our society is. So Purdue does that very, very well. So thank you very much for
that sets up Michelle Ashcraft for her conversation with you later today. And now we'll step over to the area that Stacy owns. Advance here. Okay. There we go, just on time. On the adult side, I think many of you in the room know we have nearly 2 million adults who are still in need of a credential beyond their high school diploma in order for them to really fully realize their economic and social abilities in our state as part of our civil society. We'll be focusing on that very closely. A few of us from Indiana had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago spending some time with the Brookings Institution and leaders from 2 other states, Alabama and Colorado. And we have begun to deploy what we saw. We've begun to deploy already what we saw there. And it's taking a real discrete, finite look at populations of adults to better reach them, to have specific goals around how we do that. And our chair for today mentioned some of those very specific areas: incarcerated adults, veterans. So a number of those things. You're going to hear a bit about that from Stacy, but also learning and knowing that credit for prior learning is critical. Again, I think it's really appropriate to be here at Purdue University talking about that subject a little bit, in that Purdue Global has been doing remarkable work. I think I saw Frank come into there. He is back there. Thanks for being here, Frank. But they're doing great work, and I know Stacy has been involved in that already for a long time. The really chief third area that we have been looking at, we find interesting in a couple of different ways. Indiana is roughly 14th in attracting students to our state. We hear repeatedly, we don't have mountains and we don't have beaches and so forth. Well, we have got great higher education institutions, and we are attracting students to this state. 14th best, at least in the analysis we have done, something about which we should be proud. We're 40th best in retaining students. I look at that and think that's a challenge, and more so an opportunity. So we'll be continuing to address that. Stepping on to one of the priorities that we've talked about, and I want to unpack just a little bit more this morning, is our 21st Century Scholars Program. I think, as most of the folks in the room know, I think more and more Hoosiers around the state know, we are calling for the auto enrollment of all students who qualify for the 21st Century Scholars Program. The reality is too many students are left behind. 48% of those eligible are enrolled, and the results of getting enrolled in 21st Century Scholars Program are just good. And we're going to share just a little bit of that as I go through these slides. Our 53% college going rate that I referenced on the first slide, you can see the comparison on this slide. 81% of our 21st Century Scholars programs matriculate. That's pretty amazing. The next portion of that bar you see is 30%. Frankly, those are the students, low-income students, who just got missed. Perhaps in their own home, someone was not diligent enough about signing that student up, or perhaps at that student's school that did not take place. We can do better than that in Indiana because the results are good. I think it's fascinating to look at the bottom part of that bar also, where 60% of high-income students matriculate. Note that again, 81% versus 60%. The results are good. And again, we know through Purdue Promise and other things happening here on this campus, the ongoing results for those students are very good. And we're going to continue to pick the brain of Michelle Ashcraft to help all students across the state really succeed. The bottom of this slide tees up what is on the next slide, and that is the return on investment. To auto-enroll the rest of the students who today are not getting enrolled will cost about $150 million, $160 million for that cohort. And we've estimated on the high end, and we won't fully realize that cost for about 7 years. We have funds that will help address that for several of those years, but we are being clear that there is a cost to it. However, the return on investment is very strong. I won't go into all these details, and hats off and thanks to Sean Tierney and his team for helping us do this economic analysis. But the deal is this: for the cohorts that we're able to bring on board who are not today part of the 21st Century Scholars Program, the delta between what would be expected of high school diploma earnings versus what the current mix is, of the output from 21st Century Scholars, mostly bachelor's degree, but associate degrees and so forth. The delta in lifetime earnings of the cohort, we believe to be in excess, and again, conservatively, of $1.7 billion. I think perhaps the little red bar in there is the most interesting. The estimated increase in state and local tax receipts are almost what the original cost of the program would be. So that's kind of interesting. But again, you can see the extra spending that takes place across the state, investments that would take place, including things like 401ks and 529 plans for the children of individuals who would now be eligible. So the returns are good. We've also tried to be conservative, not using any multiplier effects, although they're out there, and wanted to share this with you. And then one other that we thought was pretty interesting, and that is, what do the long-term outcomes look like for a 21st century scholar who has a going rate, as you can see on the bottom line, of 81%, their low-income peers on the top line, and in the middle, what our average college going rate is today, multiplied by two, we think, really important factors: on-time completion, and then stepping over a couple of columns, the extended time completion, which is 6 years or 150%. You can look at the two columns that we've circled. The outcomes need to be better, let me be clear, including and especially at the on time for all of our students. However, in comparison to low-income students, the state average student, we can probably slice this and dice this in a number of different ways. The two columns that are circled, the bottom lines of both of those, the outcomes longitudinally for our 21st century scholars are good. And we will continue to lean into this.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, please. Yeah, please.
I think I've asked you this before. It showed you how old I'm getting. But when you say college, does that include?
Thank you.
What would that?
Yeah, Al, thank you. That's a terrific question. It includes certificates, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees. Anything I'm missing, Sean? I'm looking at Sean. A little bit of everything. Yeah, so it's very comprehensive, Al.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what would be interesting in this chart? Obviously, during a 6-year completion is for a 4-year degree.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see what the completion rate is when someone goes for a certificate or for 2 years or whatever.
We will pull that together. And you probably know this slide came as a result of questions from the last session, from our last commission meeting. These are exactly the kind of questions we want, because if you're wondering about them, legislators are, the governor, our fellow citizens not in these bodies. So
yeah, and I don't know what the alternative is. Using the word college, we traditionally think of it as a
we do.
4-year institution.
And I'm looking at Charlie now, who can help us. You see the smiling already. We can think through how we might also word that differently, so that everybody who looks at it gets it, that we're not limiting ourselves to sort of that traditional Ivy Tower 4-year structure. Thank you. I should have asked you. Any other questions? Please jump in at any point. Okay. We'll share these next couple of slides really quickly. We just put out our completion report. It's one of a half a dozen or so reports that we issue every year. There are some encouraging signs. There are also some things on which we still need to work. You can see the data points that we've listed here over the last year. There has been an on-time completion rate improvement of not quite 1 percentage point, almost 11 percentage points over 5 years. You can see some of the other data points here: 21st century scholars versus their non-scholar peers. Again, really important information. The Scholar Success Program through which students go, those 12 items that they have to check off, that I characterize the Scholar Success Program as being a good student, being a good citizen. They fundamentally impact the student. Again, improvements in the extended time completion. I think part of the reason it's important to look at this is not only to note where improvements have been, and we're able to drill down into, and I know that the institutions do, each of their institutions, different cohorts of students and so forth. But this page and the next page on the completion, from the completion report, reflect the importance of having performance-based, outcome-based strategies. this has been a focus for the state for a long time. And we have seen vast improvements over 10 years. To be clear, we still have a lot of work to do in this area. And
Can I make?
please.
No, you go ahead.
Others who've been on the commission longer than me may already know this answer, but I am surprised to see the difference between the on-campus and the non-main campus. Almost double, or it's half of the graduation rate.
Yeah.
Do we have any background on why that is?
I think there are a number of factors. I don't know if you would want to chime in, Sean. You know, the makeup of the student body is certainly different. The average age of the students tends to be a lot different. I'd throw out a number, Sean, you'd probably know you're off there, but my guess there's probably close to a 10-year spread between the average age of the, you know, on campus or the sort of flagship institutions and at the regionals. Yeah, a number of those kind of factors where the adult certainly has a lot of other things, you know, on which she or he is focused, family and job and other responsibilities.
So is this a Stacy, is this a Stacy, you know, adult cohort opportunity?
I think there are great opportunities. I think our regional campuses are just uniquely positioned to continue to not only do what they're doing, but to even serve more robustly. Yeah.
You know, I think it would be interesting to disaggregate or maybe it's not, well, you got a 2-year campus, but to also show for those students who are not pursuing a 2-year degree, but are pursuing a technical degree of a certification or whatever. You know, in Tennessee, they split the two, and the completion rate for those who are pursuing certifications, it's like 90%, where those who are pursuing associate degrees is similar to what we have.
Right.
But I think we shouldn't leave that out. And I think it's important. And you know, when people talk about, when you talk about the 3 things that are most important, which are career enhancing, I think one reason the completion rate is so high when you're going for a welding degree or whatever is, you know, as soon as you get it after 6 months, your wages are going to double or whatever.
That's exactly right.
But I think we ought to show that.
We will. Yeah. Yeah. Again, these are exactly the kind of suggestions we need to really make this information not only resonate, but actually go do something with it. I think all of you are aware, and you'll see in the completion report too, the sheer number of completions in those certificate programs has, I don't know, skyrocketed. Is that a good term for it, Sean? In the last, I would say 5 to 7 years. And they have been very much focused on exactly what you are talking about, Al. They're career oriented. You know, folks know the quality is there. You know, funding mechanisms, the state, I think, has been, you know, very generous with, whether it's Workforce Ready Grant or others, you know, bring that affordability question, into reality for a lot of folks.
But we ought to be promoting that to the high school kids.
No doubt. Yeah, we have to promote all of the above, right? Yeah, because we're not hitting the mark on any of it, whether it's certificate, associate degrees, bachelor's degree, and higher. We've got work to do in each area of that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the next slide on completion, pardon me, I'll then have only one left to do. You know, Charlie says I'm okay on time. I'll make sure the chairman says I'm okay. Well, I don't know. Yeah. You know, the reality is we've got work to do, whether it's on completion rates alone, you know, helping students to finish, you know, somewhere closer to on time. And again, there are a whole lot of variables that go into that. By the way, I had some interesting discussions here in the last 18 hours or so with some folks. I'm going to go off my own script here for a moment. I said a moment ago that the whole focus on completion, I think one of the things that we have learned from that is to have outcomes-based, performance-based expectations. It's a really good thing. But we also have to pause from time to time and say, are those all the right things at which we're looking? Do they fit each institution? And I think it's appropriate to say, while we sit here at Purdue University, something that we have to really recognize as reality that one of the best experiences a student can have is to be an engineering student and to have a co-op and to spend 5 years doing so. And in doing so, then that harms the institution because it's not counted as an on-time completion. Now that's just illogical. And again, we can do better than that by addressing how we view these things and being realistic about what the economy is expecting, what the outcomes are for the student, what the outcomes are for employers. So I just had to mention that because probably with half a dozen of you, most likely in the audience, we've had that discussion since mid-afternoon yesterday. Back to this, the reality is we have areas that still need focus, whether it's on completions specifically. We have equity gaps that remain. Again, we can do better. One of the most promising areas where we have seen those equity gaps really narrow as you have a chance to dig into the completion report. I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Has been with 21st century scholars. The completion gaps have narrowed to almost nothing, and of course you've seen the going rate and so forth. Clearly, you see them repeated here. One more time, we're not going to get to the goals that we need. And it's not, it's not just some figure that we've placed and have said, oh, 2025, we've got to get to 60%. It is really to make our economy tick. And whether it's those certificates, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, masters, PhDs, we've got to do better on each of those levels. It's going to take all of the above, and part and parcel to that, it's going to include the college going rate, how we're working with and serving adults better, how we're working to retain such incredibly talented graduates here in Indiana, and doing so in the most cost-effective manner that I believe our institutions have already set the bar on. I think they're doing an extraordinary job in that area. And then lastly, I wanted to share a bit of news with you you may or may not have seen, and most of the focus has been around K-12, where rightfully it should be. But the Lilly Endowment has partnered with the state of Indiana, specifically with our partner, Dr. Katie Jenner and the Department of Education, with a real focus on literacy and specifically on the science of reading. And you, again, have probably seen some of the information we have placed in this slide. There is going to be a $111 million investment to help shore up where we are with reading and literacy. It has taken a hit, as all of you know, with the pandemic, but it did not start with the pandemic. This, again, similar to the going rate, has been a decline and a challenge for a long while. What the Lilly Endowment has done, which is so typical of them, is to make an investment where it really matters. What you might have missed and not heard is that as part of that $111 million investment, there is a $25 million investment that is available to our institutions of higher education, public and private, specifically those who are in the business of helping train and educate our future educators to focus on the science of reading. The endowment held a convening. I know many of our leaders from the higher education institutions who are in the room today were at that convening. I think that was last week. But we wanted to make sure you knew about this. The science of reading works, and our Department of Education is leaning into this. The Lilly Endowment is leaning into this, and so is your Commission for Higher Education. If you see our friends from the endowment, either the staff or board members, you might take a moment to thank them for once again helping us lead the way. Glad to take any questions, and I think we're up to about 2 minutes left. Chairman Studerman.
Thank you, Chris. Lots of challenges, but more importantly, lots of opportunities. So thank you for that précis.
Could I, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Madam Chairman, could I ask make a quick comment to Chris on this, and great presentation as always, but going back to the 21st century scholars, this won't come as a surprise to you that I'm going to say this, but until you tell me I'm wrong, I'm going to keep saying it. I think when people hear about the 21st Century Scholars Program and all of its success, it's rightly deserved. But I think from my history with it, it was the addition of the Scholar Success component of that program is why it's so successful today. And I think there's still a mindset of some people that don't really know all there is to know about the program, that still think back. And it was a great program to start, but the primary intention was to get money to those kids to go to school, because get them into post-secondary. But it wasn't until that Scholar Success Program was added and the elements of that. I just think it's important that we include something in that as we communicate with stakeholders about why it's so successful, and not just assume they understand that.
Dan, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. I was looking back at my colleague, Associate Commissioner Josh Garrison, who I will admit has given me a tutorial a couple of times on that. I think, Josh, you may have been around when those changes took place. You were probably part of making that happen. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've got to be clear with everyone that that's sort of the secret sauce there.
Could y'all explain that a little?
Josh, would you like to explain what the 12 points consist of? And
Yeah, so for the scholars in high school, they have to complete 3 activities per year that progress with what they're doing in high school to prepare them for post-secondary education. So for the freshman year, they have to create a graduation plan for high school. They have to be involved in an extracurricular activity or some sort of community service. The second year, it's career exploration, so they have to do some sort of work-based learning opportunity. And along the way, there are videos and trainings about what is college, what is post-secondary education, and how they can pay for it. So it's all the things that my children will do on their way to college. It's what 21st century scholars are now doing. That, with numerous other reforms that we've added over the course of the years. You may remember credit completion, increased GPA, requiring them to matriculate within 1 year. All these different changes what have led to the increase in completion.
And I would add things like a 2.5 GPA, staying out of trouble. That's why I refer to it as the good student, good citizen checklist. As Josh said, things that all of us in this room with our own children either have or will, make certain happen. By the way, I would say it if he were in the room. Seth Hinshaw is sick this morning and was texting and said he wished he'd be with you. He won't mind at all me sharing with all of you that he was a 21st century scholar. Our state budget director for the state of Indiana was a 21st century scholar. And it is quite the way to provide a hand up. Yes, Nancy.
I'm curious, what's the intersection of the core 30 and the 21st century scholars? That would seem to be a powerful impact.
Yeah, the core 40 is required. So you cannot receive a general diploma. You have to receive a core 40 high school diploma to receive a scholarship.
Oh, I meant getting the dual credit.
Oh, I apologize.
I think you have raised one of those topics that Michelle is going to be talking about
Okay.
as we look at having as many high schools. Our goal is all high schools offering that to students, because again, it just gives them a hand up to have greater success. Yeah, Chris.
Chris, at the risk of me sounding like a broken record, when you look at the data that you've presented and the urgency that we have as a state to get more kids into some kind of a workforce development program or higher education, my fear continues to be that the unintended consequence of that initiative and that effort is a drop in quality. And we have been talking around this concept of quality for a decade, and it's still unmeasurable. I haven't seen any way of measuring quality in a way that would allow us to assess as we open our arms wider and bring more people in and try to create a system that handles that we're maintaining, if not actually increasing, our quality, so that in comparison, Indiana's programs and universities operate at the highest levels globally, not just within the United States. And there still continues to be a lack of thoughtful discussion and solutions around that. And I want to encourage that we don't lose sight of that, because I think it's critical.
And you have our word. We won't lose sight of it. And I was actually looking around for one of our Purdue friends, Gina Del Santo, who may be doing better work than anyone in the area of quality. She and I've spent a little bit of time talking about that, and I think she has with some of our other colleagues at the commission. But you absolutely have our commitment. We not only will not lose sight of it, we will lean into it.
All right, thank you for the good discussion. Our agenda book contains our minutes from the last meeting, and we need a motion to approve those. So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. All right, so this morning we're going to hear from four of our public colleges and university presidents as they provide their budget presentations. As a reminder, this is the first step in developing the budget for the next biennium. So I'm going to just skip right to President Mitch Daniels. These are 30-minute presentations that will include time for questions, discussions. So President Daniels, you may begin, and we will go to 10:05 for you.
Welcome to the commission. Welcome to our good friends from Ball State, Indiana State, and Benton. This presentation is going to get a lot better when my successor, Mung Chang, starts giving it next year. But that's okay, because I also want to welcome the new members of the commission. I already noticed the quality of the questions has gotten better since you got here. So I'm in lightning round fashion. Stop me if I go too fast. Our application increase over the decade has continued, even accelerated, and as you see, almost 69,000 applications. Last year, more than doubled from 10 or 12 years ago. Want to note that we are near a record level of the number of Hoosiers attending Purdue University. We work very hard on this. Despite the college going rate, unfavorable windage that you've been talking about, we've been working on it, and we're sailing, I think, somewhat successfully against the wind. So here's overall enrollment in the Purdue system. We do not count dual enrollment here. We think it masks problems in some cases. But we were happy to see the total number that we're serving go above 100,000. That includes, we're really happy to hear the frequent mentions of adult learning. You know about our venture into that field a few years ago, Purdue Global contributing now 35,000 of the students that we are serving across the Purdue system. Here is Purdue Global Hoosier enrollment, which is, we hope to grow substantially, but we're conferring 1,000 or 2 degrees a year now, and we think there's huge upside potential. Obviously, Hoosiers get a discount. Purdue employees, by the way, attend for free. And some of the most heartwarming encounters and messages and letters I've gotten are from some of our staff who said, "I always dreamed about a Purdue degree and never thought it was in my future." Incidentally, if you want to excuse to use your Kleenex, come to the upcoming graduation. There is nothing more moving than Purdue Global commencement. We're having one on this campus coming up soon. You'll see grandparents graduating with their grandchildren. You'll see children cheering for their mom. Really a tremendous experience. And here are the credentials that we've conferred so far. I'm going to come back to that because we need the commission's help to keep expanding and constantly updating the content of Purdue Global degrees and certificates. I think, you know, the commission knows full well that we've been working on keeping costs down here. And these little factoids get better every year. 8 graduating classes without a tuition increase. Today's freshmen were in 3rd grade last time Purdue raised its costs. Here's something fewer people have paid attention to, but we pay a lot of attention. 10 years ago, we had the 2nd most expensive room and board in the Big Ten. Now we have the least expensive. And this is why it is literally true, which I think is on its own slide, that it is less expensive in unadjusted dollars to go here than it was in 2012. And if you add up, we sometimes measure if we had gone up at the national average or the Big Ten average, which is similar, how much more would Hoosier or other families have paid us? And now it's $1.1 billion that they kept as opposed to us collecting. And this, here you see on the bottom line, this is the official governmental all-in number, the total cost of attendance declining at Purdue over those 12 years. You see the Big Ten average and a couple schools chosen at random. It is not an uncommon, by the way, you see on the web, it is not an uncommon experience for me anymore to bump into a student who wants to tell me it was less expensive to come here than to stay in their home state, at their home state university. So we'd like to think of ourselves as a brain game machine. The chairman's slide about capturing or retaining more students means a lot to us because an incredible amount of talent comes here, and we're trying all the while, I'll get to this in a minute, to do better while we all constantly have concentrated a long time on retaining Indiana students. Upside opportunity of keeping some of these brilliant students from elsewhere is one we can get better at. So here's debt per undergraduate student. We watch this. This is unadjusted dollars. You see that number coming way down. We really focus on this. Another way of thinking about it is those who graduate with 0 debt, and we're up 60% now, which is 1/3 above the national average. And our default rate, for those who graduate from Purdue, is below 1%, including that percentage who does not finally get a Purdue degree. It's about 2%, but much better than all our peer groups and most of and nearest the competitors. We are very, very focused on time to degree. And all kinds of reasons we think it's a good idea. You know, I can remember in a past life urging, and finally I think passed, Tom, the bill to presume 120 hours, plenty of room for exceptions, and there's some real good reasons. But we tried to combat the credit creep. That was happening at the time. Well, by the same token, we're trying to do everything we can here to take out any internal barriers, credits that don't transfer when someone switches a major, things like that. And I think we've had a lot of success. We have more than 70 of our degrees are now available on a 3-year basis. There's absolutely no reason we can't produce at least certain degrees in 3 years, not 4. It's the convention in much of the world. And I'm using summer much more aggressively. The majority of our students accumulated at least some credit last summer. So you see the cumulative effect of this. Our average time to degree now is down around 3.9, down from 4.3 a decade ago. This means this is more affordable for the student, and don't overlook the fact that a student who gets out in the world a year sooner starts earning money, and that compounds, and it can be very meaningful over the course of a career. Here are our retention and graduation rates, still not good enough, but headed north, low 60s for 4 years, 82% for 6. We just need to keep these lines moving north without sacrificing quality. Appreciated the mention of quality measurement. That's not a one-person endeavor. We've been working on it for 10 years, Chris, and we will soon be unveiling. But we have been testing we finally settled on a test we think is the most reliable for critical learning. California something, critical learning assessment, I think it's called. And we've been giving it to incoming freshmen and giving it to that same cohort when they leave. And we now have some longitudinal data, and it shows I'm happy to say, it shows growth in critical learning. It's not, it's at least an attempt to get Chris's question and yours, how can we prove, as higher ed has never been asked to prove, that all this money is actually producing intellectual growth?
When is that gonna be published?
Probably sometime this fourth quarter. I think we'll unveil it within the next 3 weeks.
Hopefully it will incent other universities to do the same.
One can hope. Since our inception as a land grant school, we were instructed to concentrate, not exclusively, but to emphasize agriculture and the mechanic arts. Well, these days, agriculture at Purdue means biotechnology and some of the most advanced science in the world. And the mechanic arts means engineering and quantum physics and the most sophisticated science done anywhere. And we see that as a huge responsibility in an information-based economy. So we've talked with you about this over the course of time. This is where our investments have gone. This is where our growth has primarily come from. And it's reflected here, rising from 41% to 68% studying a STEM discipline. Remember, that's measured against a much bigger student body, 30% bigger than it was on the left-hand side of this chart. So it's a lot of STEM graduates that beyond what we were always producing. And I'm tempted to, but I won't belabor all these. We've collected a lot of nice notices over the last few years. And, I sometimes say of all the ones that are here, we're proud of things like innovation, free speech for sure. But to be rated as one of the most trusted universities seems to me to comprise a lot of qualities that we strive to emphasize here. I hope that's what it's measuring, but it's awfully good to see. Just to indicate that it doesn't matter what you're ranking, we tend to look good within the state, within the Big Ten, and in many, many, many cases nationally. The college that my successor among leads is has achieved what some people think is really not possible. That's excellence at scale. We strive for this across Purdue. We could deliver higher quality if we just kept shrinking and excluded more students from coming in, only took the very, very, very best students. And that's the formula some schools practice. We go the other way. We want to be bigger and we want to maintain rigor. We want to maintain standards. His college, for instance, is the biggest in the top 5 graduate or top 10 undergraduate programs in the country. That's what we're aiming at. Yes, ma'am.
Are these statistics for the whole Purdue system or just
That's West
West
Lafayette.
Lafayette?
And this trendy magazine that I'd never heard of, but apparently I'm the only American that had it. Fast Company produced Brands That Matter last year. So there with all the Apples and Ubers and these was one university in the country. Guess who? Another thing we've worked on very hard now for a decade is to translate all that STEM candle power into real world technologies, products, services, and companies. And here you see the the growth there. We took a little step back on startups last year, and we're dissecting that. This year looks like it's getting back on trend. But in a general sense, we've been breaking records on a regular basis. We were 6th in the world in patents last year. That's become a fairly regular occurrence. You saw my, well, the commission saw a lot of this yesterday. A major emphasis for us, as you know, over the recent years has been to also try to translate the assets that we have here, the intellectual assets of our faculty, the human talent assets of our student body, into fulfilling what we think is another part of our land grant assignment. That's to be an economic engine in our own right, not just to turn out great talent. That's job one, but also to bring to that talent investment and in particular investment that matches up with the needs of the Indiana economy to become more diverse and with the assets again we have here at Purdue. And so you see that some of the companies that have already located, there are a number more that with whom we're in active conversations. We've got, I think, a great partnership with the Economic Development Corporation, and we're very excited about further growth in this area. Now, just to be candid, the self-interest for Purdue is as these new companies and their jobs come here, it's making, we believe, our area a more attractive one. Chris talked about oceans and mountains, things we don't have, but we want to build the kind of environment that's exciting and interesting and vibrant with a high quality of life so we can attract the next Nobel Prize winners. And but in any event, we think in this case, our interests and the state's interests are totally aligned. And there's been, I think, some real promising progress. Now, all's not good. The regional situation, which we, as we understand it, is a national one. There are very few exceptions that I can find. Regional universities, and we have, of course, two that we operate ourselves, have struggled. And here it is, again, stripping out dual enrollment. Now there's some good news at both Northwest, which you see here, and at Fort Wayne, which you see here. Entering classes got bigger this year, and that's the first time in a while. And we've worked very hard on this. We're going to have to keep working harder. But now, of course, the trick is to retain and graduate them, and the commission's rightly focused on that problem. Open to any and all good suggestions. I will tell you that at least in our case, that historic situation, which I know is true in many instances, of a much older student body and much more part-time student body, is less and less true at our two regionals. We are dealing now overwhelmingly with full-time students, and the average age is not much higher than it is on this campus. So that's no longer the explanation. But anyway, we're very much, our board and all of us are zeroed in on this and eager to extend what we think is a new, somewhat better year we're starting now. The board is, the commission is well aware that the move we want to make in Indianapolis, and all I'll say, because I think you're pretty familiar with this, what I will say is that this is very much aimed at the idea you were discussing earlier of work and study. And we'll have to see who's attracted to this urban campus, which will not be a separate or regional campus. It'll be part and parcel of Purdue, West Lafayette. Its departments will relate directly, will report directly. But what we envision is at least many of the students there finishing their degrees or taking one of their 4 or fewer years while they're also working, interning, and otherwise with the companies that are there. We've had enormous enthusiasm for this concept from companies ranging from the biggest, most established and mature companies right on down to the high-tech startups and and others. So we think it's very, very promising. I'm sure we're going to need some help and maybe some guidance from the commission to do this. It's a new idea, but we think it has great potential. And we're really grateful to our friends at IU for being willing to work with us on it. You didn't ask, but here's some ways y'all can help. I'm going to show you in just a second. We have a capital priority, which we think is very much in the state's interest. And then secondly, Chairman and I have discussed this. Y'all could, we think, could be a little more expeditious. We waited on average 2.4 months for program approval, and then the answer is yes. We've had some of ours wait 4 or 5 months, including a couple of Purdue Global. Purdue Global, as I like to remind our friends in the other campuses, is a good example of nimbleness in higher education. They can spot a new interest or need, design a program, and launch it in months. But then they have done all that and then waited 5 months on the commission to say yes. And so, you know, I've suggested you ought to consider a presumptive approval or something like it. You know, if it's, pick a number, 30 days, I'd prefer 15, but you know, if we don't hear from you in that amount of time, you're good to go. If there's an issue, tell us what it is, we'll fix it. But that could help. Here's our request that we'll take into the General Assembly. Like our last request, which you visited yesterday, it's very much tied up in the state's need to become healthier and to have a stronger public health system. State needs more nurses, state needs more pharmacists. Once Purdue trains stay here, we have no issue in this case with the talent escaping. And we simply have to expand, and we have to, we did in the case of the vet hospital, very antiquated buildings. We believe in wringing every day and more of value out of buildings we have here, but we're at the end of the tether here. And so that's why we'll be making this appeal come January. And this is my Tom remembers this is my what is wrong with this picture slide. We're not complaining. We've done fine. We've managed without new revenue from the state now for 12 years. But at some stage, we think maybe this will turn in a slightly different direction. As far as we know, we are doing the kinds of things the commission, General Assembly, I believe we should be doing. And I just put this here, FYI, not by way of griping. Leave, Mr. Chairman. That's all I brought you.
I have a question.
Okay, I think you can do this.
Well, I calculated this morning, I thought y'all had been 11 years.
It will be. You mean the tuition?
Yeah.
That's because we like to operate in advance so families can plan.
Right.
So next year will be again the same. That'll be year 11. And that's already
All right, so
baked
that
into our plan.
may be off 1 or 2%, but you have reduced in real dollars tuition by 25%.
Well, it has to be something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, think about that. And this is a service industry. You're in the services. I had a chance to read that, listening on the radio, but service inflation is incredibly challenging. And y'all have been able to do this. I'm sure because of what you've done is to help the state average go down by 4%. But Mitch, I think you should, with Chris and whomever, write up how you did it. And hopefully other universities will look at it and say, yeah, we ought to be able to do this. Because it would be a huge benefit to the country if universities could focus the way you have on reducing the cost of college.
I've been asked countless times. I've almost never done it, to go as my colleague Gina says, share the playbook. You know, we've been very guarded about that, not just because we don't believe it's our job to preach to others. You know, we think this is consistent with the mission of Purdue University. the land grant mission and so forth. And what we've done may or may not be applicable other places. And so we don't criticize or in any way seek to contrast ourselves, but take your point. We'll if somebody asks, we try to tell them.
Al, I was going to add to that comment and say the cost containment is one issue. But as Chris was saying, the quality, so there's a nexus here where they've figured out how to meet the students where they are financially, but have inspired them to stretch intellectually in order to be here. And that has a trickle down effect through the K through 12 and everything else, which is what we want our universities to do, as you're saying. The strategic outlook, management, the other things that can't be contained in a report, I'm very interested to discover what that is too, and the team building that has been put together in order to make this happen. And it seems to me it's very close to when he was Governor Daniels, and we had reform with the tax caps and the long-term certainty that was gained by having a constitutional convention in order to do it. So that gets to the point of sustainability, which is my second question. How do we keep this going? So I would appreciate access to that team, to your point, for the commission's purpose of setting standards, or at least being able to measure, because this is a national model. So I'm just doubling down on your comment and saying, I think we ought to do something about it.
I mean, no other service, this is remarkable. TVs go down, computers go down, but services don't go down. And I remember when I first saw you after you did it, I said, so Mitch, this is 6 or 8 years ago, has this been hard? He said, no, this hasn't been hard. There's a lot of low hanging fruit, but you have continued to find the fruit because you've continued to reduce tuition, which is just remarkable.
Well, two things. First, to the extent there's anything remarkable about it, is I think the fact that on a campus where people, and I always say, thank goodness, disagree about almost every subject, that's what we're here for. Right? Foster open-mindedness and dissent and so forth. One thing everybody agrees on, I think by now, is this is a good thing. We try to be accessible and affordable as we can be. And so when you get a large organization, whether it's business or any institution, with people reasonably well aligned around a common goal and everybody looking in little corners as well as big, you get surprisingly good results. So I got to say the credit is by now shared very, very widely. I appreciate Bill mentioning quality. We never let people talk about this subject here without reminding them. One of those awards up there on that one slide is for value. That's the goal, not price at any cost. Anybody could cut the cost down to nothing if you scrimped on quality. That would never be our approach. So when people ask about this how do you do a question, I've taken to explaining all the things we didn't do. We have invested heavily. Nobody knows better than this commission about the investments in academic facilities and so forth. We have grown the faculty. We hired 213 new faculty this year. It's an all-time record. We're trying to keep up with the enrollment growth. We do not use a higher percentage of less expensive faculty, maybe slightly, but our percentage of tenure track faculty is one of the highest in the country, and we'll probably keep it that way. We have fewer international students and a much smaller percentage than we did before because talented Hoosiers and other American students want to come here, that they should be our first priority. So none of those things are involved. If you ever catch us, and you ought to watch, but if you ever catch us scrimping on quality just to keep the price down, call us on it, because that would not be the goal we have.
President Daniels, a couple questions, if I may. So the first one, and pardon my ignorance, this is my second commission meeting. One of your slides said Purdue Global graduates, 95% of them remain in Indiana. Can you answer the why?
Because they already living and working here.
Okay.
The average Purdue Global student is 33, 34 years old. Frank, am I about right still on that?
Oh, you're right on.
Yeah. Much more likely to be a woman than a man. 25% are veterans, by the way, or active duty. But The real answer is these are people who can't pick up and go back to a college campus to finish what they started or start from scratch. And so that's probably the main reason.
Congratulations on the improved intellectual growth. My follow-on question then is how do we continue to keep it? The slide showed earlier that we're 40th in the nation. I had been working with some of the folks in our legislature, and the bill died last session in committee to try to incentivize college graduates to remain in Indiana, keep that brain power, learned, taught, and received here. One of the things that continues to infuriate me was an article I read where Eli Lilly was moving a plant or a facility to the Carolinas because we didn't have the brain power in the state to keep it. So in your opinion, how do we continue to incentivize those people who come to Indiana or are from Indiana to remain here and to continue to live and work?
Right. So attracting companies, we've tried to do our part. The new Skywater semiconductor fab, that's not just new to Purdue, that's a whole new industry for the whole state of Indiana. And we hope it won't be the last such. And under the leadership of my successor, we're the first school in the country to offer an entire suite of semiconductor manufacturing degrees now.
Okay.
And so attracting businesses, Saab and so many of these others, if the jobs are here, the right kind of jobs, more will stay. The second thing we're trying to get better at is introducing all this talent from elsewhere to Indiana companies and vice versa. Now we have the most in absolute numbers, the biggest job fair in the country here. And until a few years ago, we weren't paying enough attention. I want Hoosier companies at the front row. When we open our new Gateway building, which is the new expansion both for engineering and our Polytechnic Institute, we're going to share this building. That was a revolutionary thing in Purdue history all by itself. But it's going to have an area devoted to Indiana companies, where these students from the first day they get here these companies will have an access to that. And we're just about to announce I guess I better not get ahead of us, but we're about to announce as far as I know, first of its kind agreement with a very well-known Indiana company who's been mentioned here already. That will enable them to provide scholarships from the first day of it. Some of our students, when they walk in the door, you don't have to watch them for 3 years to know they're a superstar, or that they'd be a good bet for your company. So we're open to any and all ideas that might get at this, Mike, because it's very much a responsibility we feel. But what an opportunity now with half of close to 40,000 undergraduates on this campus coming from somewhere else. If we can just start, it's no surprise that a lot of them go home. That's part of your 40%. And how you attracts a lot of out-of-state students. It's not a surprise that many come in that we don't catch them all. Boy, if we could just that a little higher average, you'd start to move that needle.
All right. Thank you, President Daniels. I really appreciate your presentation. And I think I heard a book coming out potentially. We need to move on, but I want to say thank you, Mitch, for all that you've done for Purdue University and especially for the state of Indiana, and best of luck to you. All right, and now we're going to hear from Jeffrey Mearns, who is president of Ball State University. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts on the upcoming priorities for the budget session. And thank you for your encouragement, your guidance, and your support. Here's a quick overview of my presentation. First, I want to share a few slides that demonstrate how closely our programs and other activities align with your principal priority, which is to educate Hoosiers and to ensure that Hoosiers and other students stay in Indiana to promote economic and civic vitality. Then I'm going to share a few recommendations for our thoughts about the budget session. And I'll finish with a few more slides that show the ways in which we actively engage with the communities that we serve in East Central Indiana. Now, we're proud to be an Indiana serving institution, a public research institution that supports Indiana's priorities. We prepare our students to have fulfilling careers here in Indiana. We encourage our students to be servant leaders. And perhaps the best way in which we do that is the way how many of our graduates populate the schools all across in every county here in Indiana. And we also hope to inspire them to do what we do on our campus with our faculty and staff and our students, which is to serve their communities beyond their professional aspirations, but to serve their communities in many ways. So this fall, we enrolled approximately 20,000 students. 90% of our on-campus undergraduate students are Indiana residents. With respect to this fall's freshman class, well, first of all, as you can see from that slide, we have enrollment from every county in Indiana. With respect to this fall's freshman class, we're seeing a nice rebound from the headwinds of the pandemic. Our freshman class is about 6 to 7% larger than it was in the fall of 2021. Again, about 90% of them come from the state of Indiana. Importantly, I know from the statistics that the commissioner was sharing earlier, more than 30% of our students are the first generation in their family to go to college. About 16% are 21st century scholars. But as you see on that slide, the median high school GPA was 3.65, which is the highest in the history of Ball State University. So it's a diverse student population, an aspirational student population, but a highly qualified student population in terms of their academic profile. We now have 210,000 living alumni just since the advent of the pandemic. In March of 2020, we conferred and our students earned more than 15,600 degrees just in that short period of time. More than 70% of our graduates still live in Indiana, which means we have 150,000 alumni here in the state. But as I mentioned on the last slide, many of our students are first gen or 21st century scholars. And so many of the students at Ball State lack the social capital or the pre-existing relationships in order to secure a job with a good employer. You know, these students believe in the transformative power of higher education, but they need more support from us to connect them from an academic program to a good job. So I'm going to spend a few minutes walking through this slide. I think we shared with you when you were on campus some of the aspects of this slide. But we've developed what we think is a distinctive strategic set of comprehensive and coordinated initiatives to help all of our students achieve their professional potential. So I want to briefly touch on just a few of these elements of the slide because I think this is very important to what we're doing. It begins at orientation. We actively and proactively explore with students during orientation their career interests. We don't start by asking them, what is your major? We start with, what do you aspire to do after you graduate? And then we help guide them to a major that will align with that particular career aspiration. Then with skills infusion, which you see on there, we work with our faculty to expressly and intentionally incorporate specific work-related competencies into the academic outcomes in their courses. So each course we aspire to align with competencies and outcomes that will advance their career interests. We help our faculty achieve this objective through that second point. By each summer, we place several faculty in major businesses throughout Indiana so that they can learn in the workplace setting, what are those employers looking for? So that then when they come back to campus, as I say, they have an additional leg up to incorporate those objectives, those skills into their curriculum. We've got a career-ready program where faculty can actually incorporate career-related activities into their academic courses. Like many universities, we provide mock interviews for our students, and we have career coaches that help our students explore their career priorities and interests throughout their experience at Ball State. Then I think when you were here, many of you, if you saw the tour at Ball State, we took you to the new Indiana Connections Lounge. Like every institution, we have job fairs, but sometimes for certain students, that environment can be somewhat intimidating. So with this Indiana Connection Lounge, we provide an opportunity for potential employers in a more relaxed setting to meet with our students so that these students, particularly first gen or 21st century scholars can build that sense of confidence so that when they go into those interviews, they're better able to articulate what they're learning with what they want to do professionally. And then I think some of you had Becca talk about the Indiana connection experience. We think this is something pretty distinctive at Ball State. We invite major employers to come to our campus, and we will design an on-campus experience for that company specifically designed for their interests. The first one we piloted with was IU Health Ball Memorial. What was interesting is when we talked to them is they said, we don't need connection to your healthcare professions. We have that pipeline covered. But we need people in HR, we need accountants, we need communications people. So they came and spent a day on campus connecting with a variety of students across different disciplines. What you can hear is, what you see on that slide is also, we invited the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, which, as you know, we're working with them to do as best we can to ensure that our students have great opportunities in Indiana when they graduate. So again, this is a pretty coordinated and comprehensive array of opportunities that can help our students build that social capital to climb that ladder to opportunity after they graduate from Ball State. So this next slide, then I want to transition and talk about our suggestions or our requests with respect to operating appropriation. And we really have 3 suggestions, and I think we've had an opportunity to speak with you. We encourage you to support an increase in every institution's current operating appropriation to help us deal with inflation and across the board increase for all institutions. We also appreciate that you may request additional funding to be allocated through the funding formula, but I'm grateful that you've concluded that there should not be reallocation in that formula. And then I also understand from the commissioner that you're considering requesting some additional money over the next biennium to address some significant recent challenges, the mental health challenges for our students and learning loss. And I'll spend just a few minutes on each of those items. With respect to the first request, about inflation, I'm going to show you some slides to show that there's been a long-standing disparity, at least a decade, between inflation and very modest increases in all of the institutions' operating appropriation. We've addressed this challenge, similar to what you heard from President Daniels, by managing our expenses, and I'll show you some slides that illustrate that. And as a result, like Purdue, we've not passed that burden on to our students and their families. And your support, I think, will enable us to continue to produce a great return on investment and continue to provide a very high quality educational experience at an affordable cost. So I'm going to move through these slides quickly because I shared some of them with you when you were on campus. This shows that over the last 15 years, the annual increase in our operating appropriation is less than 0.5% a year over that period of time. And even though inflation over that period of time until the last year or so has been relatively modest, it's a significant disparity. This is a slide that shows that over the last 15 years, there's been a less than a 10% increase in our operating appropriation. CPI over that period of time, the Consumer Price Index, has increased nearly 50%. And the Higher Education Price Index, which we know is that basket really of services as a service industry, as Mr. Hubbard was talking about earlier with President Daniels, has increased even more rapidly. So that's the disparity between inflation and our increase in state appropriations. At the same time, we have kept, for the last decade, we have kept our tuition rate increases at or below the recommended cap that from the commission. I think we're one of the few institutions, in addition to Purdue, that has maintained that record over the last decade. Now, here's a chart that shows over the 10-year period, over the last 10-year period, our tuition and fees have increased only about 15%. Over that period of time, CPI and HEPI have increased more than 30%. So, Mr. Hubbard, you were asking President Daniels about what's the delta between the tuition rate increase and our costs. And so we've demonstrated there's about a 15% delta between what we have actually increased tuition and what our costs in terms of our goods and services that we purchase. If we raise tuition simply just to maintain the rate of inflation, our tuition and mandatory fees and tuition is a little over $10,000. If we had increased it just to keep pace with inflation, it would be close to $12,000, almost a 20% increase. And here's the chart that shows the combined impact of how we have constrained the increase in expenses, and the increase in state appropriations relative to inflation. As you'll see, we have only over the last decade spent about 1% more for every degree that we've conferred. That's the intersection of our expenses and our productivity. So as you can see, we've done I think a very good job in terms of constraining the costs and constraining the costs that we pass on to our students. This is the final slide that I have with respect to the operating appropriation. If our operating appropriation simply kept pace with inflation going back to 2007, the operating appropriation for Ball State would be $40 million more than it presently is. Now, of course, we're not expecting you or anyone else to completely fill that gap, but I think this creates a clear and compelling case that we can present to the General Assembly to provide each institution. I suspect that every institution in the state could show a similar slide, and I suspect that you could aggregate that data as well. Before then turning to the next item, I just have one more slide. This is a slide that shows how our alumni have continued to invest in Ball State. Over the last 4 years, notwithstanding the pandemic, we've received more than $30 million in new philanthropy. Prior to the pandemic, we'd never done that 2 years in a row. And last year, at nearly $45 million, was the largest single total in the 102 or 103 year history of Ball State. Our graduates and our benefactors understand that we produce a great return on investment, and we want to share this with the General Assembly to suggest that they should make that similar investment. We understand you're also considering requesting some additional new dollars to be funneled through the formula. We're grateful that you're considering, if you use that formula, not to reallocate the resources among the institutions. And there's really two reasons, and I've heard the commissioners speak out. If we in the state are going to reach our higher education attainment goals, we want our institutions to have an incentive to collaborate with one another, not to compete over a zero sum. Also, the formula has produced with the reallocation. I'm a big proponent of outcomes-based funding or performance-based funding, but the formula has produced, I think, some unusual results as a result of the reallocation. This is the slide that shows the 4-year on-time graduation rates for the main campuses. This chart then shows the combined on-time completion rates bundled into those same 3 groups. In the red, that's IU Bloomington, Purdue West Lafayette, and Ball State. Those are the other 4-year institutions, and then the 2-year institutions over that same period of time. But as you can see on this next slide, there's been an inverse relationship between the increase in state operating appropriations over that same period of time. This is not really a problem with the formula so much as the relationship between the formula and its elements and reallocation. So that's why I would suggest to you, and I'm grateful that you're considering not including reallocation. With respect to that third possible bucket, with respect to the possible request for some additional operating funding, we suggest, and in the conversations we've had with some of the leadership in the General Assembly, that you tie that to some of the challenges that every institution in the state is facing with respect, and those are two that I think. One is the mental health challenges that our students are facing as we emerge from the pandemic, and secondly, the learning loss. If you realize that the freshmen, the incoming new students at every institution in the state of Indiana, their sophomore year in high school was interrupted by the pandemic, their junior year was probably pretty darn choppy, and even their senior year in high school probably was not what it was prior to the pandemic. So I suspect that all across campuses in the state of Indiana, our colleges are having to provide more academic support for our students. This is our capital request. I think you're aware of it. It's to renovate and restore existing academic buildings. We are not asking for funding for new buildings. Rather, this is consistent with our long-term master plan. We've been fortunate with your support that we are in the process of completing the renovation and restoration and replacement of the Cooper Science Building. The first phase of that was our Health Professions Building. The second phase was our Foundational Sciences Building, and we're now renovating the Cooper Science Building. This is the next phase of our campus master plan. Many of you have had the opportunity to see our campus, and you know that we've invested in a strategic and coordinated and thoughtful way. And this slide that Becca insisted I put in there was to show you that it was a strategic approach. I'm not going to go through that slide. We'll also be asking the General Assembly to request an increase in our, in our line item. We were founded by entrepreneurs. The 5 Ball brothers were successful entrepreneurs. That entrepreneurial spirit continues in terms of the creative and innovative approaches that we can take to our academic programs as well as our student support services. So I want to shift gears and want to move quickly again to leave some time for questions. This slide shows where the graduates of our teachers' colleges are presently teaching and working. Our teachers' college graduates are teaching the children of Indiana, K-12, all across the state of Indiana. And we're sustaining and extending our partnership with our local public schools. You're aware of the distinctive partnership we have with the Muncie Community Schools. As you heard, we shared with you, they've stabilized enrollment, they've balanced the budget. I know for this group, that's not an heroic effort, but prior to the partnership, the prior administration and school board only balanced the budget once in 10 years. The new school board has balanced the budget every year, and as a result of their prudent management, they've been able to increase the compensation for teachers and staff. Again, not remarkable, except when you consider for the prior decade, the teachers and staff in the Muncie Community Schools had not received a raise for 10 years. And over the last 4 or 5 years, that teacher compensation has increased by about 30 to 35%. And we're generating support not just from the state, but generating support from philanthropy and in competitive grants. Just since the partnership, nearly $18 million of external funding, including an $80.1 million grant from the Indiana Department of Education to focus on early childhood education, pre-K, and literacy in K through 3rd grade. So I then want to just end my presentation with a few final slides that share how what you've seen about how we're serving the community. We believe very firmly that a public university not only has a responsibility to educate the students that they serve directly, but a responsibility to serve the community. So we are catalyzing our investment in the community by investing in the village, that commercial district that you saw that's immediately adjacent to campus. And our vision is to attract other people, not just students, to go to the village. All you have to do is come to West Lafayette or go to Bloomington, and you can see the transformative impact that a public university can have on the community to make it a vibrant place for people to live and to work. We're going to invest through philanthropy to build a performing arts center in the village. And as a result, through the contract that we've signed with a private developer, they're going to bring $100 million of private investment just to that commercial district. And I can assure you, there aren't private developers that are bringing $100 million to East Central Indiana, to Delaware County, or to Muncie. And this, I think, if you've walked through the village, unfortunately, this is what the village looks like today. And in a few years, when you return to Ball State and on your next visit, this is what we anticipate the village to look like. If this clicker, there it goes. That is the rendering of McKinley Avenue and University Avenue in the center. That is the Performing Arts Center, our first class hotel and restaurant and apartments, a Barnes & Noble store and the like. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to visit with you this morning, and I hope I saved. Yeah. Yes, not for kidding. Hope I saved some time for questions.
One clarification on one of your slides, there was, I believe if I wrote it correctly, you have an $81 million request for some infrastructure or improvements. But then at the bottom, it said you would save 75 million in deferred maintenance savings.
Yeah, so that will, those buildings actually need to be restored. And so that capital investment will reduce our overall deferred maintenance backlog by at least $75 million.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Well, actually, I'm just curious. What, I can't remember, what percent are first generation?
A little over 30%, somewhere around 30 to 35%, and that has been consistent for at least the last decade.
And this is sort of out of our area, but do y'all have, I mean, from my understanding, wraparound programs are so important, particularly for those students. And is that something y'all put a big emphasis on?
Yeah, so we encourage as many of those first generation students to participate not only in orientation, but in some form of a summer bridge program. And then we also have realized that Every institution has a welcome week, that first week of the classes. We've changed that this year to weeks of welcome. It's a 6-week program now, and each week has a different theme, because the recognition that particularly for students who may not have come from a family environment that appreciates what happens on a college campus, they need a little time to absorb that information and to acclimate themselves to campus. But we do understand that really those first 6 weeks of class are critical. If a student is engaged academically and socially on campus, their likelihood of retaining and persisting and graduating goes up very high. And one of the things that we've learned is, frankly, we need to have our faculty providing early feedback in that first 6 weeks. Midterm grades are too late for many of those students because they may have already disengaged. And if they've disengaged by midterm, their ability to then get it caught up and successfully complete those courses. And we received a grant from the Lilly Endowment of about $2.5 million to focus on that first year experience specifically for that student population. First generation students, underrepresented minority, 21st century scholars.
If I may, just a quick comment and kind of a question tied to it. A great presentation, and our recent visit was I just thought so awesome on a number of levels, but in particular to Chris's point about the affordability and quality and career relevance piece. That career relevance piece was so dramatically reinforced with all of your industry related programmatic work around that. And it was just so impressive to see. So, huge congratulations and kudos for that work. I'm just curious if, and I didn't think to ask it when we were there, that whole programmatic effort, was that built upon just internal learnings and collaboration, or were there learnings from other best practices across the globe in a sense? My thought is, how do other institutions figure out what's right for their operations to try and build in some of that real career relevant?
So I think 2 things happened. Yes, we had people who were learning from other institutions. I think what we have found beneficial is a close alignment between the staff in our career services and on the academic side. And in many institutions, those operate in distinct silos and they hand students off to the other. We're fortunate that they've worked closely together and bring together the ideas that they have in each of their sectors and work closely together. I imagine there aren't many institutions where the assistant vice president for career services has direct professional relationships and collaboration with academic department chairs. And he's helping them with their faculty, as I mentioned, infuse particular work-related skills in their academic program. When we began offering this about 4 or 5 years ago, with certain disciplines, it's not necessary, right? In a health profession, in a nursing program, everyone in that program understands they're preparing students with the skills to go out and be nurses. It's not obvious in English. I was an English major, or history, political science, some of those other programs that we think actually provide you with the skills to be successful in a career. So what we're doing is a much more intentional focus about why somebody in political science or in history or in English is actually gaining skills that might very well be applicable in a professional setting. So I think that's what we're doing, is a much more intentional and collaborative approach.
Dennis?
Professor Marins, thank you very much for the presentation. And going back to the presentation, even at Ball State, for what it's worth, I think your presentation was just nothing short of brilliant, terribly insightful. The finances, just the perspective, the eye for appreciating what we may not necessarily always think about, particularly as it relates to cost versus inflation. So I just think those data points are really helpful, and we will take heed to that. And then I have a number of questions, but in the interest of time, I won't, but just know that your presentation has provoked a number of questions. I have a question about, I see the fiscal responsibility and the impact that it's had on teachers in terms of compensation. Again, very insightful. So I want to ask about the preparation, whether you're seeing that translate into the classroom and results. but I won't ask that question, but I'm curious.
Follow up with you offline.
Yeah.
We can open the opportunity to have a conversation.
Yes, sir, I'd welcome that. But as we talk about buildings, costs, facilities, maintenance, et cetera, since you all have the unique position of having a school of architecture, how does that inform, influence, or even create advantage for you all that maybe other universities don't have? I mean, what's the benefit of that we may take for granted if we don't have a school of architecture?
So embedded in our capital request is about $30 million to upgrade the CAP building. As you may know, our College of Architecture and Planning is somewhat unique in the country. It brings together all 5 disciplines in the built environment: architecture, landscape architecture, interior design, urban planning, and construction management. So students in any one of those programs right at the outset are working together on collaborative projects. So I think that's what helps all of our graduates in those disciplines be career ready. Then more specifically, when we're doing a major construction project on campus, we ask that company, will they allow our students who are in the construction management program to participate in, essentially serving as interns on a project on site. So we do it more with construction management than in some of those other disciplines, but they get hands-on practical experience on the projects that they're seeing being constructed right on our campus.
And then I'm sorry, just as a follow-up, but then as we focus in on your presentations to the commission, then how is there any involvement directly from the school as you're looking at these presentations that you're talking about costs and need of building? Does that are they actually involved in your preparations and in your analysis?
Well, our campus master plan, which this request flowed from, was updated over the last 2 years, and we did a comprehensive campus engagement strategy. So our students had substantial input all across campus. Our students had input into our campus master plan, which this specific request flows from. Not just students in the College of Architecture and Planning, but all of our students.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Mearns. I just have to say, you are one of the most welcoming and enthusiastic presidents I have ever met. So keep that up. No wonder you have weeks of welcome instead of a welcome week. That's how you come through.
Well,
So thank
every day
you.
I say how fortunate I am to have the opportunity to serve as the president of Ball State, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, and now we have Dr. Deborah Curtis, who is president of Indiana State University. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It's terrific to be here to present with you today. And I often say when I get to talk about Indiana State, it's my favorite topic. Many of you may not know I'm an alum. I earned my PhD at Indiana State and one of only 2 alums in institutional history to serve as president. The last one was 100 years ago. So we're going to try not to let that happen again. I also want to start by saying it's delightful to see Ann Bowen, a wonderful Sycamore, and the first student on the commission to be reappointed by the governor. So I get to go. We're pretty proud of her. It was particularly delightful to host the commission in Terre Haute in June. See, there it is. ISU is transforming the lives of students, improving the social mobility of our fellow citizens, and helping the state build and sustain a stronger workforce pipeline. Our work, I think I got past where I should be. Yeah, it is a little. Oh, well, I double clicked, so okay. It's about providing opportunity. We've talked about that today to those who seek a valuable post-secondary education. It's about ensuring quality, and we talked about that several times today, and I'll say a little bit more coming up. All the programs that we foster at Indiana State that meet workforce needs, that accreditation is available for, we meet national accreditation, much like programs at other institutions that come at a much higher cost for students and their families. For us, of course, it's about affordability. No one who is able should be priced out of earning a college degree. And it's about an outcome. And for us, the outcome is student success, graduation, and starting that career. This is why it's important for Indiana State University and the state of Indiana to have your support. There we go. Decades from now, people will look back and wonder how COVID-19 impacted our lives. Our message is that Indiana State University never closed and never operated out of fear. Our dedicated faculty and staff work incredibly hard. We followed the pragmatic guidance of local and state public health officials, and we embraced the governor's call to manage through this pandemic. We're pleased to say that over 6,500 Sycamores graduated since 2020 when the pandemic began. We delivered on our mission by graduating large classes, the majority of whom entered this state's workforce. The state of Indiana needs us to do more, and we're ready to do more. Quit early. Once again, ISU demonstrates tremendous value by way of graduates who go on to pursue their professional goals in the state of Indiana. ISU was one of the first universities to fully engage in a first destination survey, and we do this regularly. Each year, we prove that ISU continues to fuel the Indiana talent pipeline. The data for the class of 21 is once again outstanding. 95% of our graduates were tapped to fill jobs in their fields of study, are attending graduate school, or are serving in our country's armed forces. With an average starting salary of over $57,000, and I come out of teacher ed, our teachers, I'm sorry to say, lowered that average a little bit. Nearly 7 out of 10 graduates remain in Indiana. This is consistent with the distinctiveness of Indiana State for many generations. We know those earning an ISU degree during the COVID-19 pandemic fared far better than those without one. Our first destination data are strong, and we will achieve pre-pandemic results. We're pleased to be what we call turning the corner from the pandemic in our enrollment. This year, we achieved a 7% increase in new freshmen. 81% of them were from Indiana. 49% are Pell eligible or low income, and 36% are from minority communities. We're encouraged by our enrollment growth in a few key areas. 21% of growth of freshmen in the ISU Honors College was a wonderful reading for us. These honor students could go to college anywhere. They selected Indiana State because of the distinctive, individualized experiences provided by our supportive faculty and found throughout our beautiful campus. Enrollment is about retention as much, and I tend to believe almost more, than admissions. We're inspired by the results of our work to increase our one-year retention rate. Yet, of course, there's more to be done. Our institution prioritized in 21-22 the implementation of a program we call the Indiana State Advantage. This, we believe, helped us grow our freshman enrollment. The program addresses key areas through 3 guarantees. The first is a guarantee of free tuition for Indiana Pell eligible students with a grade point average of 3.0 or higher. The second is a guarantee to graduate in 4 years, provided the student creates a plan with their advisor and they stick to the plan. The third, there we go, is a guarantee of up to $3,000. $3,000 in a grant for students to engage in a high impact experience such as student research, internships, or study abroad opportunities. We believe that our Indiana State Advantage program has helped us recruit more freshmen and honor students, most of whom are from Indiana. This is why you often hear me say, and I know you've heard it before, Indiana State University is the state of Indiana's university. And that's why it's important for ISU and for the state for us to have the support. Partnerships are incredibly important for us, and we're grateful to state and local leaders who recognize the value of partnering with higher education. Here are a couple of examples. This past summer, ISU partnered with Governor Whitcomb, Elaine Beadle, and the Indiana Destination Development Corporation with the In Indiana campaign to attract interest, visitors, and ultimately new citizens to our great state. ISU also worked closely with communities in the region to improve quality of life. We are completing a very successful 2-year partnership with the city of Sullivan, and we're working to establish new partnerships in nearby communities. Several of our outstanding faculty have embedded experiential learning projects into their curriculum to engage our students in developing recommendations and plans to address those communities' goals. Indiana State has also been successful at forging strong partnerships with private foundations. As referenced earlier in our increase in retention, the Lilly Endowment has provided $9 million to support our work in improving the retention and graduation rates among minority and low-income students. Indiana State also became the first public university in Indiana to partner with the JED Foundation to evaluate and strengthen mental health, substance misuse, and suicide prevention programs as part of our commitment to the emotional well-being of our students. Earlier this year, we received national recognition for our work in serving first-generation students. The First Gen Forward designation recognizes our commitment to improving experiences and advancing outcomes for first-generation college students. Indiana State continues to be recognized in the top 14% nationally for positively impacting the social mobility of our graduates. Of course, yet again, more work to be done. In order to meet the needs of students and communities in the state, we continue to expand our preferred partner program, which provides customizable educational offerings to businesses, government agencies, healthcare systems, school districts, and others. We're shouldering up with industry to improve post-secondary education for adults already in the workplace. We see here on the slide our recent launch of a partnership with Geodis, a world leader in transport and logistics, to utilize space at the Made at Plainfield facility. This space is now home to the Logistics 4.0 Innovation Hub, where individuals will train in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the management of logistics companies. These advanced technology jobs require 21st century teaching and learning facilities. On September 16th, we launched the public phase of the Be So Bold campaign for Indiana State University. The campaign's priorities are driven by our strategic plan and the workforce needs of the state of Indiana. Results of this campaign will significantly impact these areas. As you see in the slide, student scholarships, experiential learning, faculty excellence, and Sycamore athletics. We are achieving some very encouraging results. Because additional support is so needed and valued, the philanthropic work makes it possible for more Indiana State students to achieve their educational goal of crossing the stage at commencement. Our fundraising goals are aligned with our strategic planning priorities listed here, and as with our previous strategic plans, our plan aligns with the strategic priorities of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. This work contributes to the state's big goal to inspire our fellow Indiana citizens to continue their education and increase their skills by earning a high-quality credential beyond high school. We're determined to positively impact Indiana's college-going rate. Please note in this slide these distinctive ISU programs that are fully aligned with the technology workforce priorities of Indiana. Students are influenced in so many ways and often have little insight about the myriad career opportunities in demand in Indiana. Many enroll at ISU thinking about one field of study and then learn about other exciting career opportunities, particularly the programs listed on the slide. Indiana State is a leader in these programs, and every one of these programs produces the workers desperately needed in Indiana. That's why the support is so important. We continue to ask ourselves, what are those jobs that tend to be resilient against economic downturns, outsourcing to foreign countries, and automation? Healthcare and education continue to be the sectors with strong in-demand job opportunities, and both have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. Graduates of these programs become the essential workers in healthcare and education. And I would say no single university can alone meet all of the state's needs. It takes all of us delivering on each institution's distinctive mission to fuel the workforce pipeline. Yet, of course, there's more work to be done. In addition to our programs that are focused on workforce needs, ISU provides tremendous economic and social impact to our state and region, including nearly $450 million in campus construction over the past 14 years, 5,000 jobs supported by the university, 76,000 visitors drawn each year to the region by the university. And we also provide added value through the nearly 700,000 hours of community service our students provide each year. ISU serves as the arts and cultural hub for the greater Western Indiana region, and we attract tens of thousands of people each year to events. We're also an important driver of regional economic development. In partnership with Vincennes University to our south, ISU helped form and sustain the Wabash Valley Regional Development Authority, which works closely with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation on projects that uplift our region. With support from the Ready Grants Initiative, Indiana State is leading a collaboration to enhance early childhood education in Western Indiana, and we're very proud to be a leader in this subject. When we think of the workplace pipeline, we need to better recognize that it begins with our youngest children. Because of ISU, the Western Indiana region, as well as the entire state, benefit from sales tax revenues spurred by university-driven or sponsored events. And we keep engaging in more. ISU, like all colleges and universities, pays close attention to demographic trends, which have been alarming in recent reports. Commissioner Lowry spoke of these challenges at his very first commission meeting at ISU on our campus this June. Indiana's enrollment pipeline of high school graduates is declining and is expected to decline for several more years. Given the demographic changes, it's more important than ever to work together to communicate the value of a college education. We also need to be mindful of something that is very obvious to ISU, yet sometimes overlooked by thought leaders in the state. The top 20% of Indiana's high school graduates are going to attend college, either here in Indiana or somewhere else. Indiana State, along with every other college and university, is communicating with this top 20% group of prospective students, but ISU also communicates with those able students beyond the top 20%. Those citizens make up the bulk of the future workers our state needs right now and over the next several decades. Indiana State has long served and continues to serve these citizens. And today, too many of them are not accessing post-secondary educational opportunities at the rate needed to fill the talent pipeline in Indiana. Indiana State University's mission is dedicated to supporting and working with many of these individuals. Some may be in that 18 to 22-year-old bracket. Some may be reentering civilian life after military service. Some may be place-bound adult workers. We need our state leaders, and including you, to recognize and support ISU as we work to partner to educate those individuals who are smart, talented, motivated, and aspire to lead a better life as they contribute to the growth of Indiana's economy. These citizens may not be in the top 20% academically, yet many of them are very able and have so much to contribute to our 21st century economy by earning a college degree. And ISU is here for them. It's more important than ever to work together at the State House on public policy that will help more of our fellow citizens take advantage of the opportunities that a college education provides. Over the past 2 years, ISU was your only 4-year university partner to publicly testify in support of your legislation that would increase FAFSA filings among those citizens most eligible for funding already provided by our country and state. We stand ready to do that again. Why is this important? Because the population of citizens needs access to financial aid to change the trajectory of their lives, while employers need these workers to fill great paying jobs in Indiana. Over $65 million for Indiana in federal aid was unused last year. This is both tragic and unacceptable. We also will again work with commission staff on efforts to increase 21st Century Scholar signups, as we heard about earlier today. This is very important to ISU. We're the college home to the highest per capita percentage of 21st Century Scholars in the state. ISU is also continuing its commitment to institutional partnerships. In 2019, we forged a new partnership with Ivy Tech called Pathway to Blue. Students who did not meet our minimum admission requirements a few years ago might have been conditionally admitted to ISU and were less likely to be successful in college than their non-conditional admit peers. We changed that with this important partnership. Today, these students are able to start at Ivy Tech while participating in ISU residential and student life. Post-pandemic, we believe this partnering will increase student success as we develop co-academic advising, community events, and other support programs to provide another pathway to a four-year degree. As we transition to our budget priorities, we thought this would be the clearest and easiest way to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to affordability. Please note this slide. ISU remains the most affordable option compared to other universities in Indiana that serve a residential statewide mission while maintaining one of the highest percentages of Indiana residents being served. The Indiana State Advantage is an example of how we work to achieve this distinction. We thought it would be helpful for you to see how we compared institutions out of state with similar missions. We heard a reference earlier that there are students in Illinois who can come to Indiana State for greater savings than they can stay in state. And this is becoming clearer and clearer. Having spent a significant part of my career in other states, I can say there's not only the same level of state financial commitment to higher that we enjoy here, and I've been in multiple states. I am very grateful for the support that comes from Indiana for what we do. Because of the state support of ISU and because we take seriously our charge to be good stewards of the funds we receive, we can help more Indiana students realize their dreams of earning a college degree. Each university operates differently depending upon size, mission, and resources. Because of this, ISU has been and remains committed to a lean and very efficient operational system. Here are some unavoidable costs that increase annually. The current unusual rates of inflation particularly impact these costs. As we continue to offer a high-quality educational experience, these will always be challenges for an institution like Indiana State. Yet we remain committed to affordability, mainly because our students can't afford to pay more. There we go. The Commission for Higher Education, rightly so, is re-examining its model for outcome-based funding. The next few slides capture our thoughts and have been previously shared with the Commission as well as with Legislative Study Committee that met last year to examine higher education funding. We believe that emphasis on student performance, including degree completion and retention, remain important. We embrace outcome funding. We continue to believe that the persistence requirements on programs, and this was mentioned earlier, for example, the 21st Century Scholars have helped with improved retention rates at ISU. Here you will see our renewed request for a formula that better addresses mission differentiation. How might this be implemented? Institutions would have different metrics derived from their missions. For instance, Indiana State would receive more funding for our work with those graduates entering the Indiana workforce, particularly those who are at high risk of vulnerabilities associated with being a first-generation college student. Indiana needs more of these students graduating to fill our in-demand jobs. It is these graduates who will change the trajectory of the Indiana talent pipeline. We would also ask that the state develop a model for measuring more timely performance using a more simplified 3-year rolling average to measure improvement. Under the current model, funding for public higher education during this biennium compares the 3-year averages of academic years 19, 20, and 21 with the 3-year averages of academic years 16, 17, and 18. Degree completion metrics for academic year 16 would have measured freshmen who started in the fall of 2012. It's likely we would probably all agree Indiana's workforce challenges and opportunities today are considerably different than those we imagined in 2012. And finally, we asked what outcomes would most benefit the state of Indiana. I'm hopping ahead. As I participate in discussions around the state with different groups that I serve, reports are often shared with data indicating the greatest workforce needs in Indiana and our progress or lack thereof in meeting those needs. A funding formula that clearly conveys the outcomes needed by the state that stands the test of time will be in the best interest of taxpayers and consumers of Indiana's public higher education services. There are 3 line items for which we seek continued support. All 3 are initiatives the state of Indiana asked ISU to undertake. We're committed to delivering on these initiatives. This is the first time we have requested an increase to each of these line items due to the national inflation challenge. The first is the Indiana Principal Leadership Institute, which was created with bipartisan support during a time when there was not a lot of bipartisan support and agreement on K-12 educational issues. Legislators such as Luke Kinley, Jim Banks, Earlene Rogers, Tim Brown, Wendy McNamara, and Sue Arrington worked together to advance the initiative because they agreed with ISU that leadership matters in our public schools. And they agreed that Indiana State University's College of Education needed to be the home of IPLI. Here you can see IPLI's impact. From my experience at other states, you won't find this kind of program elsewhere. This means Indiana is a leader in developing effective K-12 leadership, and that's why it's important to have support. DegreeLink is an example of leveraging limited state funding to advance higher education opportunities to place-bound citizens who are not in a position in life to attend college in person on a campus. As technology has evolved, so too has the operational functions supporting DegreeLink. The pandemic has exposed immense opportunities for ISU to redeploy this important funding to reach more place-bound citizens. Because of the success of our undergraduate distance programs, we have developed graduate programs on the same model of flexibility and affordability. The enrollment growth of our online MBA serves an example of this point. Place-bound adult workers can advance their careers and increase their standard of living because of ISU through this program. We continue to hear from the Commission for Higher Education that over 700,000 of our fellow citizens have some college but no degree. DegreeLinks help citizens who cannot relocate to a college campus complete a high-quality degree on their schedule. Your support at DegreeLink assists our growing efforts to attract the non-traditional learner and further develop Indiana's talent pipeline. The state of Indiana to reach the big goal of 60% attainment of citizens with a high-quality post-secondary credential, DegreeLink is needed now more than ever. The nursing line item supports ISU's work to help the state with the never-ending challenge of building Indiana's nursing pipeline. We have known through demographic analysis that as more baby boomer nurses age to retire, coupled with the dramatic increase in the need for health care by an aging population, there are tremendous strains on the nursing profession. The pandemic has exacerbated that challenge. Indiana and the nation will continue to be challenged with general health care demands augmented by public health challenges, much like what we have weathered in the last 2 years. Our state must keep working hard to develop our nursing talent pipeline, and Indiana State continues to be your partner. Universities serve as excellent conduits for state investment that directly impact local economies. As you recall from my economic impact slide, construction on the ISU campus has provided much needed work to the construction trades, which in turn provides work to other businesses such as suppliers, transportation, and trucking providers and service industries. And all of these jobs are in Indiana. As with our previous capital requests, we factor a number of considerations, particularly what are the greatest workforce needs of the state based upon competitiveness, workforce demands, and the skills needed for high-paying jobs. We also ask ourselves, what will work look like in the coming decades? Preparing the 21st century workforce requires 21st century teaching and learning facilities. Earlier, you learned about ISU's fundraising efforts. We know from these efforts to increase philanthropic support that the state's investment in 21st century facilities can inspire our donors to invest in ISU's high-quality academic programs, which are located inside those facilities. We continue to align our programs with the critical workforce needs of the state. On Indiana's Department of Workforce Development website, the state uses flames to clearly rank high-demand fields. 5 flames indicate Indiana's occupations most in demand. For instance, if you go to the DWD website and click on the 5-flame job, industrial engineers, one of our own College of Technology graduates, Danita Tompkins, is featured there. Danita is a fine example of sycamores fueling Indiana's high-tech economy. Yet indeed, we have more work to do. This brings us to our capital priority, the ISU Center for Technology, Engineering, and Design. As with all of ISU's capital budget requests, this is a special repair and rehabilitation of an existing facility, the technology building, that was constructed in 1980, when technology meant calculators and a limited number of computers that were the size of an entire room. Educational facilities must change because work has changed in the US, and they must be relevant to prepare graduates to meet the needs of Indiana's employers. If we don't provide the workforce pipeline to fill those high-paying jobs, other states will, and indeed other countries will. The result will be a loss of investment in Indiana as competitiveness and companies will go elsewhere. For example, the decision by Intel to choose Ohio over Indiana for construction of a major computer chip manufacturing facility is yet one example. The Center for Technology, Engineering, and Design houses academic programs that support the pipeline to high-demand jobs, including those listed here. I'd like to especially point out that this facility would house one of our most relevant programs, cyber criminology. The bottom right picture on the screen shows Vigo County Prosecutor Terry Modisett as he's swearing in 3 ISU cyber criminology students as digital forensic investigators to assist the county with combating cyber crimes. This is a prime example of experiential learning at ISU. These graduates are so critical to our state because Indiana was recently mentioned in the media as a state significantly vulnerable to cyber threats. This is ISU's highest priority. The project consists of a renovation and expansion of the technology building, which will be modernized as the Center for Technology, Engineering, and Design to meet the specialized laboratory and instructional needs unique to engineering and manufacturing. Of course, across the country, such facilities are not inexpensive, but we commit ourselves to providing these educational opportunities to meet Indiana's workforce needs. By making this request for a 21st century facility that will provide a tremendous long-term return on investment, we ask your support. Through this investment, ISU will be able to do what we do best, educate and graduate students in these areas who regularly remain in Indiana to live and work. I want to conclude by reminding you of our mission on the screen. ISU is doing great things as we keep Indiana and our fellow citizens first and foremost in everything that we do. The very best part of my job is being a part of every commencement ceremony where I have the privilege to see our graduates cross the stage and hear their families erupting with joy as these graduates begin a lifetime of unlimited opportunities right here in Indiana. Now more than ever, the investment in Indiana State is critical to the economic and social well-being of Indiana and beyond. Thank you so much, and I have to say, go Sycamores.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes for questions.
I'll be quick. Thank you for that overview. I am a CPA and took a continuing ed on cyber criminology, and it was one of your professors that taught it and talked about that program. And one of the questions we had for him was whether that can be replicated in other counties, given, the capabilities of remote work. And have you been able to expand that beyond Vigo County, or is that part of your strategy?
Well, that certainly would be part of our goal with the renovation of this facility, to be able to have the kind of environment where we could do that. So that would absolutely be something, we want to replicate and make available the successes we have to be replicated elsewhere. So that absolutely would be one of those categories.
Okay, Bill.
Madam Chairman, yeah, thank you. The presentation was excellent, and we appreciate it. And I just want to say I appreciate your focus on economic development impacts for the state of Indiana and also Ball State and their reach out to the industry. Folks, I was talking to one of their team members yesterday about relationships with other universities and kind of stressing the importance of regional economic impact for probably your institution and that one in particular, given the economic challenges of those communities. So my question is, with all of the feedback that you're getting beyond just the kind of project by project interaction with the IEDC, are you guys able to correlate, or are you already doing that? This kind of feedback you're getting from your regional economy and feeding that into the IEDC strategic outlook or the legislature in terms of what's needed more specifically from them to help you elevate your regional
Let
economies?
me say a little bit about that, because I mentioned our partnership. We happen to have Greg Good at Indiana State University, who chairs the RDA. So if you want to say anything about that connection, please do. But we were happy to just welcome the secretary to Terre Haute just this week and had a chance to chat with him.
Thank you for that. I appreciated your service on the selection committee when we presented to you about a year ago. As the president said, that we had the Secretary of Commerce in Terre Haute just the other day. And part of this is, the 92 counties, those lines were drawn, in the 19th century, right? And with county seats established for a day or less of a one-day carriage ride or horse ride to get to your county government. We have made tremendous progress getting county commissioners, economic development officers, county councils to think beyond the county line. That Ready Grant has been a big part of that. We are particularly unique in Western Indiana that we not only have Indiana State, Ivy Tech, and Vincennes University to our south, but we also have two great independent colleges, St. Mary Woods College, Roseholm Institute of Technology. We've got this, what we call a higher education of excellence cluster. And it is those institutions that are going to help Western Indiana leverage the resources necessary to attract that talent, also building on our strategic geographic location right on the Illinois state line. And there are a lot of people in Illinois who are very unhappy with the economic environment, the lack of economic development opportunities. And it's our job to bring them over to Indiana, partnering with industry and partnering with groups like the Indiana Destination Development Corporation to keep them here.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Curtis.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Dr. John,
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson, we're going to stand up for 2 minutes just to get some blood flowing. So you can amble back and forth because we have a hard stop at 1/4 till. That's including questions. Yeah. Keep this music. Yeah, I'm not drinking what I want. Yeah, yeah. Who are you, Chuck?
Hi there, good, how are you?
Good to see you.
She is doing a great job.
And make sure I ask.
Yeah.
John, I won't be doing that. I appreciate the. So go ahead and start if you need to.
I'm from Fort Wayne and my brother is in.
Well, we're going to go. The three of us are going to go and we're going to go there. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Doing well? Well, I didn't want to get
No, no, not at all.
We want to stay focused.
Just don't understand what
So much information. Yes. And the last guy, it's always, I wanted to try to.
So we're looking at what it says about the last, right?
Have their agenda, they have a plan.
Well, my concern is that they're going to end up in a place where there's hard. Excited.
our students is 24. We have 109 dual credit schools that we partner with, and we are 75% full-time students. And as an open enrollment in residential college, we do serve 90 Indiana counties currently of the 92, and several students from outside the state of Indiana. In fact, our statewide presence, it can be seen in this map, what represents where we have dual credit partnerships, where we have training centers, our aviation technology center that many have been at, our Jasper campus that you've been at, our Gibson County Center, our training sites in Plainfield and Lebanon, and our early college programs, particularly our CTE early college programs that have been reaching into high schools and career centers to deliver CTE, Vincennes University education and certifications to high school students coming out of many communities across the state, every workforce region. One of the things that's also important, I think, is to realize that Vincennes University is a state institution. We know we're the oldest institution in the state of Indiana. We talk about that all the time. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that makes you feel like you're just old. It is important that we're not the same institution we were in 1801. And one of the ways we've changed over many years is we've established a nationwide mission. We have a mission across the United States. We're on about a dozen different military sites around North America, delivering higher education opportunities to active duty military families and military personnel and their families. We do first responders in Florida, and we do a variety of things with our online programs. And so sometimes we actually run into our partners at Purdue Global on the same campus, same site across the military locations. But we also bring in students from across 33 different states and 20 countries here at Vincennes. We have a strong history of international students at Vincennes, helping to introduce them to U.S. culture and opportunities. And many of them do stay in the United States after transferring on to four-year institutions and hopefully staying here for their careers. He is very proud of our affordability and our heritage in being Indiana's lowest cost residential campus. We maintain that through a wide array of programs and real strong fiscal management we've had, trying to utilize the funding from the state of Indiana and from our tuition granting programs as wisely as we possibly can, minimizing our administrative bloat, minimizing the number of layers that really we try to focus on delivering as much as we can towards student experience and toward the outcomes that are so important. During the pandemic, we did some analysis of why our students were borrowing money and what was causing some of the student debt that we were seeing. We noticed that the major pattern we saw for students going into debt from Vincennes University was because they borrowed to live on campus. Cost of our tuition actually is about 2/3 of the cost of living on campus. And so through resources that we allocated, we found a way to provide a residential scholarship up to $2,500 a year for 2 years, reducing the cost of on-campus housing. And one of the things we noticed was that as a result of that, the last 2 years, our student borrowing has gone down an average of about 40% for residential students, a significant reduction. We've reduced the overall cost of attendance by a significant amount, and it's directly impacting the loans of our students, which we think has a path forward if we can sustain this scholarship. Even before that, though, nearly 50% of our students were graduating debt-free from Vincennes University through a variety of vehicles, working their way through programs, scholarship programs that we bring to the table, as well as the low cost of our education, which our tuition is still covered completely by a full Pell Grant. When you add in a 21st century scholar, our students going to Vincennes University has nearly 2/3 of the cost of attendance already covered. One of the things we're quite proud of has been the focus on student success and seeing our extended time and on-time graduation numbers grow significantly in the last 6 years. They're not where we want them to be. They're not necessarily as good as we'd like them to be, but they are on par. I believe the average on-time graduation rate for a community college is about 13%. Ours is just over 32% this past year. 46, almost 47% in extended time graduation for an associate degree student. Again, these are things that we take very seriously. We've put a lot of resources and effort into producing these results. And one of the things we're trying to do is become innovative in how we help students find success. As you know, we take students who come from a variety of backgrounds, and they oftentimes come to us with what I call the triple challenges, right? They have a challenge in social support and family networks. They have a challenge in terms of academic preparation and academic goals and focus. And they also have a challenge in financial resources. And so when you deal with students like that, you need to have a variety of tools that you can bring to help them be successful. One of the tools I believe you all heard about last year that is one we're quite proud and excited about is something called Circle In. It is a phone app, so we're getting them between their TikToks on their phone. With a gamification, they get points that they can earn toward prizes that they can then do. If they load the notes from their class to a discussion board, if they reach out to another student and say, let's study together tonight, or let's get together for a chance to go over our notes before the test, or whatever it might be. If they do certain things for classes, we have about a 50% adoption rate of this year, which is the folks at Circle N have been amazed with that. In fact, BU has been asked to speak to others about what we've been doing to get that adoption rate. Our provost, Dr. Laura Trainer, has been the great champion for that work. And it's being embraced by not just our students, but by our faculty and by our many staff who support students throughout their successful journey. Circle N is also something that we hope to see how we can adapt it and adopt it for other ways to impact students, maybe socially. We know students, and this is something that we see all the time. I can remember very vividly before the pandemic going into the dining hall where I try to eat about 2 or 3 times a month during the school year. And I was in a section of students about this size, and there were about 15 to 20 students sitting there at lunch. Not a single student was sitting at a table with another student. Not a single student had their face out on their phone. So we've got to figure out if we're going to reach them, we've got to reach them where they're at. And that's where they spend too much of the time. And if we can get them connected that way, then maybe we can get them connected in a more traditional way, the way that we know that they're going to need to be connected if they're going to be successful in this world. I won't belabor this, but this is just a partial listing of all the industry partners that Vincennes University currently engages with, some of whom are ones that we've been working with for decades, some of whom are ones we've been working with more recently. I will point out a couple that I think are really outstanding examples. The first is Toyota, and we've talked about Toyota. They've been a great partner in Southwest Indiana for a number of years. They helped us establish the AMT program that now has expanded to several other companies in southwestern Indiana, southeastern Illinois. But in addition to the 2-year AMT program, which is really an apprenticeship program where the students are getting experience while they're going through our program in a condensed schedule on 2 or 3 days a week, they came to us and said, you know what, we're not getting enough production out of this. We have more need. We still want to keep this program and keep this pipeline, but let's start training our incumbent workers and creating a program where those who maybe have some mechanical aptitude or capability could get some training. So we established a 16-week program that we do in Gibson County in our facility there, where they will send people on the clock. They get trained over 16 weeks, and then they get started in the industrial maintenance area, the automation and mechatronics area. And that program has been very successful, and they've doubled and tripled their demand there. And then just this past year, they said, you know what, we'd like to do something else. Can we do a 1-year version of the AMT program? So right now, we are probably, I think, about 60 or 70 Toyota employees or future employees enrolled in training programs through Vincennes University and education programs that have an academic credential, that have work-based credentials and experience that will give them a career path that will be quite valuable. So we see this kind of modeling, evolution or development happening across different places. You've heard me talk about our Amazon partnership, which is one we're quite proud of, being the first school in the United States to be approached by Amazon to establish an apprenticeship program. Started out in central Indiana, and with due respect to our friends at Purdue or Nibble, I think we're nibbler. That is a word, right? But don't break my English, please. But we launched our initial program in less than 5 months with no curriculum, no faculty, and no apprentices. And then 6 weeks later, they came to us and said, we'd like to change the model. We'd like to create a nationwide program out of this. And then in 4 months, it would have been 6 months, would have been shorter than that, but the pandemic hit. We started a program that has now graduated over 600 apprentices through the first level of training through the Vincennes campus. And we see this model as having relevance, not just for Indiana companies, but across the nation. And Indiana companies getting the great benefit of having this resource in their backyard. All right, so, well. I'll remember that. Thank you. So one of the things we're most excited about right now is in the past year and a half, we've received great support from the Lilly Endowment to expand some of our programming into a variety of areas. One of which is the establishment of a Center for Applied Robotics and Automation. And with all of the programs we've had in automation and advanced manufacturing over the years, we've never really had kind of a focused center or a place where we could use it as a way to study new technologies or develop new programs and curriculum, or maybe invite employers in to sample things. And with our partners at Telamon Robotics, we've been able to establish a Center for Applied Robotics and Automation that now has 3 collaborative robot centers throughout the state of Indiana, in Jasper, in Vincennes, and in Lebanon and Indiana. Then we will also deploy about a dozen robots, cobots, collaborative robots that are designed to work alongside human beings in several of our high school and career center partners throughout the state before the end of this year. One of the great things about this is that it is a chance for us to engage with new technologies that can be adapted and adopted quickly. An example you see in one of the slides here is a collaborative robot that is being used to sand furniture. It has applications in Jasper, Indiana. And through working with Telelon, working with VU, and working with the employers, we've introduced them to the way that they can take some of the more repetitive and dangerous tasks that are being done by humans and give them automation and let the humans do the less dangerous things and more integrative things that they need to do in the work. So this has been an exciting development for us. We're really, really pleased and proud of this. And it's all part of our Advanced Manufacturing Center and our hallway that we just launched last week in technology, where we have our advanced CNC laboratory, our additive manufacturing, our 3D printing laboratory with metal printers and significant new resources, our traditional robotics and automation, and our new collaborative robots that we are really, really pleased to be part of. When we first launched this program, we wanted to see, well, maybe there's some existing curriculum out here that we can adapt, or maybe there are some places that we could use as examples. And we looked up places that we thought might be leading the charge in collaborative robots. And we contacted both these schools. They had made some headlines or announcements, or one of them received a grant. The first school had just received their first collaborative robot, and the second school was waiting on their first collaborative robot. We'd already had 20 deployed by then. So we feel like maybe we are at the leading edge for not just Indiana, but for the United States with collaborative robot technology. Another place that we use Lilly money is to invest in K-12 initiatives related to STEM, reaching into the elementary schools that feed into the high schools, that feed into the post-secondary institutions, with design and innovation studios with our partners at Indiana Manufacturing Competitiveness Center here, based here at Purdue University. And through this, you'll see 6, 7, 8-year-olds, 9, 10-year-olds engaging with collaborative robots and doing 3D printing and programming these little balls that roll around and go on tracks, and guiding them and learning about electronics and introducing them to some of the more basic concepts where they will later maybe learn the more technical and mathematical and physics and things like that, but getting them excited about the technology first. And we've done about 4 of these centers so far. We have plans to do another 10 or 15 if the funding will hold. But Vincent University provides the funding. We're working with our partners. Lilly Endowment has been a big part of this. Toyota has funded some of this. We just received some money from the Ready Grant that we're hoping to use to multiply our effort. And we'll reach all over Southwest Indiana and beyond where there's opportunity. So we're really excited about how we're able to kind of start building this STEM pipeline from the ground up. We also, at the same time, have been looking at how do we address this college going rate problem that we're facing? How do we get people excited about college, give them a college experience, many of whom haven't even considered college? And so again, with support from DWD, with support from the Lilly Endowment, and with our own efforts, we have tried to build out our on-campus programming for students, whether it's Science Fridays or a surveying camp, or it's our Techmester program or Xmester programs for early college students, a STEM Academy for 7th, 8th, 9th graders in Jasper, and 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in Vincennes, the Jobs for America's Graduates Academy that we launch each year with partnership from the DWD. We're trying to get students on campus, hands-on with our equipment, interacting with our faculty, engaged with career planning, and thinking about, if I want to do this, this is the education path I need to follow. We have over 2,000 students on campus, and our goal is to double that number in the next 3 years. So we're really excited about the opportunity to engage more and more students with what college might be for them, and hopefully open their eyes and help Indiana move that college going rate the other direction. As we talk about Vincent University's partnerships in dual credit and early college, our Project Excel program, which has been around since the 1970s, and our early college program, which are now over 30 such programs around the state of Indiana, have been impacted by our ability to plan and inform and monetize the decisions that we make for resources and things. As you know, the state of Indiana decreased the actual per credit hour amount that was awarded for dual credit 2 biennia ago, and partially reinstated it just last year. And this is a dollar figure that in real dollars is probably closer to $30 after inflation. And we'd like to see this go back to the original $50 per credit hour where it had been, and where we again had made decisions, because these are decisions we have to make today that get paid 2 to 3 years later. So we have to be able to count on these figures staying the same. And we've been reaching thousands of students. And I will say that while all of us have seen improvement in our on-time graduations and things, dual credit has had an impact there. We see a direct correlation between the students coming in with dual credit, the number of dual credits they have, and their ability to sustain or maintain their enrollment and get to that on-time completion. So this is an important investment for Indiana, and we should treat it as an important investment and fund it appropriately. As part of that effort, we also, by the state of Indiana, my first year as president at Vincennes University in 2015, we had received a $3 million appropriation from the state of Indiana with the charge to establish 10 career and technical early colleges and bring them up to speed in terms of equipment and curriculum and faculty support. We established 18 such partnerships and on the same $3 million. Well, we're reaching a point now where to sustain the ones we have and have any continued growth, we're going to need to have an infusion. We're about time to replace some of the equipment we put in 7 years ago. If we want to continue to build these programs, we've put over $10 million of equipment in these centers over that period of time. It does take money to deliver high quality, world-class CTE education that is going to be of a caliber that Vincennes University and other institutions want to see.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yes, sir.
Can you go back to that last
Yes, I
slide?
can. Maybe.
Can you, I mean, that's exciting, I think. Is this in the K-12 system?
Yes, so we work with the Career Center. They are teaching Vincennes University courses with equipment that is the same kind of equipment they would use at a Vincennes University lab, with Vincennes University faculty overseeing the curriculum, overseeing the faculty professional development. We're keep giving them access to the latest technology so that we can invest in these career centers. And the state legislature realized in 2015 that we had been underinvesting in the equipment and the programming and career and tech centers. And if we're going to move things forward, we needed to infuse things like career and technical early college in these. And so we have 18 of these partnerships around the state. And I think we could do another 10 or so in the next few years if we have the resources to do it.
But do they get a certificate?
They can get a certificate, they get advanced standing toward an associate degree, they get exposure to industry. Some of these have work-based learning opportunities, which is the next phase we're really trying to build out. But it is a program that I think is unique and is one that I think that is really making, could make a huge difference, making a big difference now for Indiana.
And so what, curious, how much does it cost per kid?
We waive the tuition for our career and technical education costs. It costs them nothing. So they may get 30 credit hours toward a technical certificate that will cost them $0, equivalent to a full year of school toward an associate degree or even a bachelor's degree.
And what does it cost you?
It costs us significantly. We put people in the high schools that are career coaches and advisors and assistant deans, and they work with the students, the counselors to try to get them on these tracks and manage them. We put people in the schools to do the professional development. We bring the faculty together to train on our newest equipment. We provide a lot of resources to support them and the students. They have access to some of our library sources and things like that. And then we do get the reimbursement from the state that is, again, that has been reduced, but it's nowhere near.
It's a dual credit.
If we were teaching, we would get nowhere near what we were teaching. If we were teaching these courses on campus.
And does Ivy Tech do the same thing?
Ivy Tech is something very similar. Yes. And so we talked, I think, in several presentations about the healthcare pipeline for talent and how critical it is for the state of Indiana. And certainly in our region of the state, with our two campuses in Vincennes and Jasper, the leading hospitals there and healthcare providers there and the surrounding counties are telling us they absolutely need to have a greater pipeline, not just of nurses, but across the board in healthcare. And so our first priority is a new Center for Health Sciences and Active Learning. We'll include an active learning center that we're patterning and working with Purdue University on establishing the equipment, the layout, and the way we would teach in that. This 70,000 square foot facility, though, would reach primarily healthcare careers on the Vincennes campus. It would also be a way that we can build career ladders that we talked about with our healthcare partners, such as maybe someone gets a job as a phlebotomist, and then they work their way as a phlebotomist, and they may become an LPN. And from an LPN, they can become an ASN, or they can go directly into our BSN program as a part of this. And the number of career paths that are there, they're going to fluctuate over time. The demand is going to ebb and flow. And so one of the things I think is that I've seen, certainly in working with the commission this year, that's been a really positive experience, has been we suspended our paramedic program about 6-7 years ago. And it was a suspended program. And then we had hospitals in the area and healthcare partners in the area saying we need to reestablish a paramedic program. And just in a matter of weeks, we were able to get that program reintroduced. So I want to thank Commissioner Lowry and Ken Sauer for their work in helping to bring that program back on board quickly, because now we can begin building the pipeline for that critical program. And maybe in 3 years, the demand will have been met and we may sunset it again. But this kind of accordion model is something I think we need to take a look at for a lot of our workforce needs and education. Our second priority in capital is infrastructure projects on Vincennes, Jasper campuses primarily. These are continuations of projects that we've had funded in the past that have been important to helping energy savings, improving the quality of the facilities, including quality of air handling and things like that. These are important for us to maintain a safe and a comfortable environment for our students and for our faculty and staff. And we asked for $23,856,000. I think that's an estimate. I don't think it's exactly $23,856,000. It's probably somewhere around there. It's a rounding error. But it is a significant project, one that will have a major impact on our ability to continue to develop and deliver high quality education. And then our final project is a critical area for us as well. It's a new welding technology training center. The one we have currently right now is, if you've been there, it's absolutely full to the rafters throughout the academic year from 7 in the morning till midnight. We have room to grow. We can bring more welders. We have welders that are graduating here making $70,000, $80,000 on a one-year certificate and making $100,000 if they continue to expand their skill set. It's a critical area. We think this will be a nice addition. We will hope to place it somewhere near our current College of Technology. Right now, our old facility, which is basically a pole barn, is located on the edge of the campus. This would integrate welding with automotive technology and some of our other mechatronics and automation programs, including robotic welding cells that we're installing with collaborative robots. And so I think it's critical for all of us to think about making these investments at this time for the future of Indiana. I think it's important for all of us to think about the impact we're going to have for generations. We've got to bring these students back in. I know, Commissioner Lowry, this is a top concern of yours, that we've got to help find a way we're going to lose a generation of students. Something we're seeing, and it has me mostly concerned, is it's not just that we've had a high school or college going rate that's dipping, it's who's not going. It's who we're losing. And in our case, we're about 55% male on the Vincennes campus. If only 46% of Indiana males are going to school, we're missing a generation of males that somewhere we're gonna have some issues we're gonna have to deal with if we can't get them into an education pipeline, either as an adult or somewhere along the way. So I think these are critical investments that we hope you will support.
Are there any questions? We have time for one, but I know you're going to be in at lunch with us, correct? All right. Good. So thank you very much, Chuck. I appreciate your presentation. All right, we're all going to recess for lunch. Lunch is next door where we had breakfast. Those of you who need parking tickets to exit the garage, please see Charlie. President-elect Mung Chin is ready to start his presentation. I'll check down there. Hopefully we'll have time to get a little food first. But then we will start here at exactly 1300, 1 o'clock. So please be back on time. Thank you.